Hello and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today we're reviewing the astrology from March 30th through April 6th, 2025, and we're your host. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
So welcome back. The topic of this whole podcast is really going to be heavily about Neptune entering Aries, which happens on Sunday, March
Mhm.
30th. This is right after our last solar eclipse in Aries. So we had that on March 29th on Saturday. And now we had this big Aries kind of new beginning and big kind of exploration. And then Neptune comes into the picture as well, starting
Mhm.
a whole like 14-year cycle with us.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about here with Neptune transitioning into Aries. And if this isn't the first time you've heard about it, I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing a lot more because it's going to be like a big topic. Um, when an outer planet shifts, it's like a really big deal because they do take so long to transit.
Right. And they definitely it definitely speaks to like a whole new cycle ending and a whole new cycle beginning. And
Mhm.
so, when was the last time Neptune was in Aries?
Yeah, so was doing some research. So the last time Neptune was in Aries, like in the most recent history, was 1861 to 1875. And we will talk about it, but there's a lot of like war themes that come up with Neptune being in Aries. There's like a lot of art themes. But artistically and relating to like aggression and war too, like combining, yeah, that. Um, but yeah, at the
Right.
time, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, right, to like look at these transits, you just want to like break down the core meaning. So, like Neptune
Hmm.
as a planet, we talk about the outer planets when they were discovered. And so Neptune was discovered before this transit happened, but it was during the motion pictures of TV coming
Hmm.
alive and like all around then, the illusion of things. So Neptune represents a lot of illusions, disillusions, fantasies, idealizations, art and creativity and that sort of kind of transcendental space of like consciousness. And often it will represent like this one consciousness or like collective consciousness. And
Hmm.
so we take that planet and put it in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, which is the exaltation of the sun, which is all about war and aggression and fighting and individualization, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
planet of the individual, the one who is the leader, who is going into these fights and battles and conflicts and aggression. So, the biggest thing is like it's like spiritual warfare, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I think you said it great. It's like blending the two topics. So like um, looking at it like what does Neptune represent and then what does Aries represent will give you a clearer picture on what Neptune and Aries looks like. And we'll talk about like some themes that we've seen in the past. And maybe that will clue us into what we will be seeing this time Neptune is in Aries. So, Neptune will be in Aries, actually from this date, the 30th of March.
Mhm.
Um, until October 22nd of 2025 when it'll retrograde back into Pisces. And then it'll spend about a year there until it enters again into Aries on the 26th of January in 2026.
So just like 3 months.
Oh, yes, right. Yes with the with
So
the
yeah,
months
it
and
probably like goes back
years.
to like 28, 29 degrees of Pisces, and then it'll just move straight back into Aries. So maybe like a 3 month, kind of like what
Period.
Pluto did. Like there's like a 3 month span of Pluto and Capricorn in 2024 before it returned to Aquarius for good.
Oh
So
yeah. Hmm.
not
Yeah.
really a long time. A lot more of Neptune and Aries.
Yeah, for sure. So we have like one final dip back into Pisces for a couple months, and then we'll go back into Aries, and that'll be full swing. And I think it actually transits out into Taurus for a tiny bit in 2038, but that is a long ways away.
Yeah.
So we're really kind of like welcoming this in almost full swing, despite that little dip back. But yeah. So, shall we talk about like what it has represented in the past?
Yes, for sure. So, I mean, the most recent one, I mean, again, we said in 1861 through 1875, that was with the American Civil War and the abolition of slavery. That it it's not direct spiritual warfare, but it kind of is because it's really about your beliefs of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like Neptune representing consciousness in all one of humanity. There was this battle of what people are humans and what people are things and slaves, right? Like this big battle of belief systems and what they believe to be true in terms of like the rights, human rights of others. And so uh there's such a like just like thinking about our current times, like not ideal to think about like the last time that Neptune was in Aries for America was when we were having a civil war.
Right. But I really think that there is like, I wouldn't doubt that at the time they were like considering the idea like what happens to one of us happens to all of us. Like
Right.
if we're going to hurt, people who are slaves, that also affects us, and like brings the whole collective down in one way or another. So I think it was like, if I fight for you, I'm fighting for me and like the betterment of the collective, which is like very Neptune. Like, how can we improve the collective experience? And it would be like, let me take care of my neighbor so I can take care of
Mhm.
myself.
Right. There was like this, it is sort of like your individualized beliefs come to represent the collective around you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I fully believe that this has to change. And I'm going to start fighting for it because I believe everyone should experience this.
Yeah.
We talked about Neptune and Pisces a little bit last week, but I think that was a lot more of acceptance of different beliefs. And now this like Neptune and Aries is more of like, we need one belief.
Yeah, like how can we bind together, bond together? How can we come together regardless and like create a belief that serves everyone, a singular belief. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I just think it's like I think the part of that is interesting is like which belief comes through. Like ultimately the Civil War, the Union States won. And that's good because slavery was eventually abolished. I mean, it took 100 more years after the Civil War for slavery to like really go away or like racism to finally, it's still prevalent
Yeah, I
today,
was gonna
but
say we still got it going on.
it's
Yeah.
still prevalent today, but in
Yeah.
terms of it being enforced by laws, and segregation, that was the initial start, but it is like this fight of beliefs. And I think it's just sometimes with Mars, it's like, I'm right, no, I'm right. And there's no other room for wiggle,
Yeah. But that's very much Aries though. It's like
right?
Aries energy is like finally that person that stands up and he says, you know what, this isn't right. And like that's when the battle begins. It's like that beginning of that one person, like being like, actually, I'm going to fight back and like, I'm not going to accept this anymore. And that's why I think we see that, you know, that's the beginning stages. And it took the next 100 years to be able to like move through that, starting from that like very beginning battle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you put on here, it is like fighting for the underdog, fighting for the people whose beliefs are not heard.
Right. Yeah. Like, so Aries, like any sign, of course, like has, yeah, like a yin and yang or like, part of it that's like, acceptable or socially acceptable, and then a part of it that kind of gets criticized. And like Aries at its best, like will fight for the underdog and will be that person that's like stands up and like explains like, no, this isn't right. But Aries at its worst can be like very impulsive and rageful and like just like you had mentioned before, Maddie, being like, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. It's like very much like fighting for fighting's sake. Um, Instead of like having like a clear, it's like you just want to win the battle. It's like egoically driven, you don't really have a clear purpose for that. Um, but nonetheless, like we're definitely going to see like these two themes come in, like fighting for the underdog, and also we have to be careful not to just like fight for fighting's sake. you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the big war component. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It wouldn't be,
Neptune,
yeah,
it wouldn't be Neptune Aries without wars. I mean, we're
right.
gonna see it collectively anyway, like we just are. But
Hmm.
especially because Neptune is into a sextile with Pluto. But anyway,
So, yeah.
there is a lot of art component too. I think, Neptune again, like we said, was like it was discovered as a planet around the first TV's motion pictures, but like a lot of what we have color photograph was created in 1861. So like, again, this illusion, like creating illusions and like putting things into color, into vibrancy, and just other sort of like and innovations in terms of television and photographs and those art components of creating an image kind of I do see that like can be a thing that's really starts to develop more with Neptune and Aries.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. Like getting more, like pushing the peg on like artistic mediums and things like that. The one I found interesting about when color photograph was created, like after that in 1868, we started going into this like moving picture where there were flip books.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's interesting because, Aries and Mars like represents movement, and we have like this like creation of art into movement. Um, so I thought that that was really cool. And then we've got some other like literature developments that happened the last time that Neptune was in Aries. We have a couple different like literature pieces that were created. And Maddie pointed out something very interesting. So I'll just go through a couple of them. Um, so let's see. We have Tolstoy published War and Peace in 1869. Darwin published The Origin of Species. So that's super interesting. But followed up with The Descent of Man in 1871. In 1872, Nishi published The Birth of Tragedy, and Monet painted his Impression Sunrise, which inspired the name of the Impression movement. I just wanted to share that piece actually for anybody who is watching on the YouTube.
Oh dang, yeah.
So this is the piece that Monet
Ooh.
painted.
The
Yeah.
sun, the fire sun in the middle, wow, around all the gray.
Yes, I thought it very much depicts like this blended energy. Like we have these like warm tones. We have representing Aries, and then these very cool Neptunian tones represent like this huge body of water is like so
Right.
Neptune. And even in this photo, you can't really see clearly. Like it's very like
It's foggy.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is very Neptune. It's like in the far left here, we might see some like smokestacks, or how do you call those? Like smoke
Yeah,
towers? Yeah.
structures of something. Yeah, you can barely tell what it is. But yeah.
Yeah. But I thought it was super interesting. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is a cool representation artistically of what that could look like.
Right. A lot of the artwork of this time, we're noticing like crime and punishment and, Christmas morals. These are all artworks about like tragedy or like war-torn societies or, people coming out again of hardship, very Aries, very Mars things, and like making that into art.
Mm-hmm.
Like your pain is art, which is very Neptune and Aries, the descent of man, the birth of tragedy. Like these are all like even just the names of the works. It's just like expecting like the hardships that you go through, the wars or the battles that you experience through your time as a human on Earth.
Right, right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, art is not, oh, I don't want to say always, but a lot of the times very political, but I wouldn't be
Oh yeah.
surprised if we see a lot of political artworks being born in this time that have, heavy messages about what's happening in the society or collective at large.
Right, exactly. So it is always like that. Whenever there's like huge times of like war or, economic unrest or economic
Mm-hmm.
unsettlement, there is another upswing in terms of escapism. Like that is sort of the like other side of that. Like your life is so difficult. So then how do you escape? So there's more art, there's plays, there's television, there's more of that being created too to give people that outlet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, we all need a way to express ourselves and, through tragedy, art can be like a wonderful way to like let go of some of those like internal battles that are also happening simultaneously with the external ones.
Exactly. So this was more collective. Again, for you personally, you want to look to Aries. You want to look to the Aries part of your chart. What house
Mm-hmm.
does that rule for you? And we talked a lot about Aries last week, so you do want to overlap some of those themes from our last week's podcast into now. But like, you know, even though there's all this tension in Aries, it's going to kind of develop a spiritual component in that part of your chart. There's going to also perhaps be a need for you to be more intensely involved or like engaged with it holistically, but maybe perhaps there's confusion with that part of your chart too, or a little bit more of like, I don't know how this is going to work out, or I'm not sure what's happening here. And there's that element of just not really knowing things either.
Yeah, yeah. Neptune can definitely, like, especially in the like birth chart, create confusion, like you had mentioned. So, like, especially like look to where Aries is in your birth chart, but especially if you have any personal planets in Aries.
Hmm.
Just go ahead and look like where will Neptune be traversing over? Like, is it going to hit any of your personal planets? And then what houses are those relating to? So, like, for example, I'm just going to pull my chart because it's like the most relevant in my mind. But let's say that Neptune were transversing over my Venus. Venus rules my first house and my sixth house. So those themes related to like my body in the first house and like how others see me, and then themes related to my sixth house of health and pets and like my daily work. Like those themes might be getting some level of confusion or needing like me to take a deeper look at them for clarity because confusion doesn't just exist for confusion's sake. It's also, or often, like an invitation to go deeper into that subject.
Hmm.
Like, okay, I'm looking at it from the surface level. I don't understand. Like, how can I sit with this and be quiet with it and, let it unravel over time and allow me to like look deeper into this so that I can gain clarity when Neptune like finally passes over that personal planet. You know what I mean?
Right, it's like this element of questioning that part of your
Yeah.
chart, right? Like
Yeah.
questioning if that is still true or not for you. Like, is the way that you see yourself or the way that you are worked onto your body, like, is that still truth? Or is there actually something that's changing and that you need to, you know, just evaluate it more, dive deeper into it and see it more holistically in terms of, so, oh, it's just always been this way. I
Yeah.
think Neptune really does represent a lot of change in terms of like just your overall beliefs, right? So like the beliefs you hold about yourself are so strong, like there can be a lot of changes around that. Again, if you have, I think Neptune's only going to get to like 1 degree because it doesn't come exactly opposite my sun this year. So, because it
Okay.
moves so, so slow. So you got to think about
Hmm.
this, like it's long term, it's not necessarily going to be something that's you notice right away, but like it only gets to like 1 degree. But if you have anything in 1 degree of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer, those are definitely going to be more impacted and interesting to look at, like those planets right there.
Yeah, because you're going to be having aspects to those. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. I remember like just a personal story when Neptune was transiting over my sun. I used to go to yoga and every day like that I would practice, I remember I would be in like some kind of like surrender pose, like a what do you call that? The puppy pose or like
Yeah,
child's
or
pose.
child's pose. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I remember I used to just like be like, please bring me clarity. Like, please. Like, I just had absolutely no clarity at the time, and I was so confused. And it's just so funny, like reflecting on that period. I didn't even know at the time, of course. I wasn't like into astrology. I didn't know I was having that Neptune transit, but it's funny to like reflect on it and be like, oh my gosh, I was like praying for clarity every day because I was so confused.
I have that same kind of story when Neptune went over my Saturn, and Saturn rules my sixth house of like work, and then my seventh house of relationships, and like in my sixth house, I just like I did become kind of a more spiritual approach to it. Like I really became like a full-time yoga teacher and like that's all I was
Mhm.
doing for a while. And then like I was like, I'm not gonna go back to the corporate world. So I started working retail. Like God knows what I was doing, but I was just like, I'm just gonna be a manager in retail stores now. Like, like
You said,
just
I'm
this
gonna choose my own experience. Like,
yeah, like this little disillusion. And then on the negative side of that, ruling my relationships, my partner was like living a totally different life, lying to me about everything. Like I didn't know what the truth
mm,
was in those situations. You know, it is this like truly shift of perspective though, where I was like, I'm just not gonna do this anymore. I'm gonna try something totally new, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, for sure. So don't be surprised that like through this Neptune transit, like it just totally like changes the way that you think about things or the way that you believe things or your approach to things. Um, it's just going to alter that and in a beautiful way. Like I look back and like I'm on the other side of it now and it sucked while I was in it, but like now I feel like that was a necessary time for me to go inward. It was necessary to do those things. And had I not, I would lack clarity now.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is. I know in the middle of it, you're just like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But then when you like
Hmm.
get past it, you're like, okay, I get the point of all that.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't
Mm.
know. That's a big part though for this week. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you want to add about Neptune and Aries?
That's all for now.
Sure, we'll
There's a
talk
bunch of
about him more.
history. Yeah, there's a bunch of history about it. And as Neptune is like making aspects, we'll bring it back up later in the podcast. But
Yeah.
yeah, as like an introduction to it, I think that's great.
Yes. But we will shift gears this week as this kind of crossover is happening, and the rest of the aspects this week are primarily in Pisces. So on Monday, the 31st, Venus in Pisces, now still retrograde, is going to conjunct the North Node in
Mm-hmm.
Pisces. So
Yep.
there's like this big intensification though of Pisces energy
Oops.
while Neptune leaves Pisces, but
Right.
I just thought it was interesting. It's like this big kind of wrap up. This part of the Venus retrograde is going to be very different than the first part of the Venus retrograde that was all through March. Now in April, that you're getting the second half of the Venus retrograde, which will be all of April. Venus leaves Pisces like April 30th or April 29th or something. So you get this entire month now of reviewing different, it's like a whole new chapter, like this
Mm-hmm.
Pisces area of your life, and you're now reviewing whether you like it. And I think with the North Node meeting Venus is definitely going to be kind of intense, loud.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely do think it's gonna be loud. It's like North Node, like as we've mentioned before, is like kind of your destiny point for like the next year and a half while it spends time in Pisces. So you're kind of getting like a preemptive look into what's that going to look like, and we're kind of like starting it off with a little bit of a review. We already did have that Venus North Node conjunction. I can't remember when that happened, a couple weeks ago.
I think it
Um,
was in January,
was it
early
that long ago?
January. Yeah, because
Oh
she's
my
been
goodness.
slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll double check again exactly, but I do think it was pretty while ago. And then like, yeah, you are kind of coming back and reviewing that again, like, hey, did I still like this? Is this still an intense desire for me? I feel like Venus on the North Node is like real intense desires. Okay,
Hmm.
sorry, it was February 2nd was when they first conjunct. Um,
Okay. Yep. That sounds
but
about
still
right.
a while ago.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, February moves so fast, like just the
Right.
month in general, so it's like seems like it doesn't even exist sometimes.
But really though, you may be reviewing themes from, late January and February. That's when Venus was in these degrees of Pisces. And like, yeah, there's like this intense thing that you highly desired in early February. You may be coming back to it again, like it may be coming up for you again, or you are reviewing if that's still something you want to pursue. And I don't know, I would just, those things tend to overlap. So I would just be curious for yourself to kind of reflect on that.
Yeah, I think it would be a great reflection point. In any case, like Venus, I think we talked about it before also, but Venus in general is getting a big like cleansing and review. So definitely look to where like Venus rules in your chart, to see like what those themes are that are coming up for you, and then review the dates that Maddie mentioned, to see like get a broader picture of that.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I do think though, at least Venus and Pisces will be more easy. I feel like
Oh, for
Venus and
sure.
Aries, yeah, I feel like Venus and Aries has just been like, I've been fighting all these things. Like, I'm just fighting
Oh,
for
I
what I
know.
want
I'm
constantly.
Yeah, I'm so excited for Venus to come back into Pisces actually, because I'm probably going to come back out into the world for a little bit, but then I'll retreat again. So,
Yeah, you'll be like, oh, okay, I can breathe again.
yeah, and then oh, never mind, going back now. But
For a
but
month. You get like a month of Venus and Pisces for April, so
yeah,
you can
I don't know
enjoy
if
it.
any of you guys have realized it, but as soon as like Aries or Mercury moved into Aries and then Venus was in Aries, like I was pissed. I was fighting with people. Like everybody was annoying me. And I was like, you know what? I'm just done.
Yeah,
So I'm happy that it's coming back. Yeah.
I think for me, it was more conflict within myself. Like just all this heightened, like, I hate that I do this. I hate that this is my life. I hate that this is my reality. And it was like all this
Mm-hmm.
personal conflict. But yeah, again, it was just like conflict. Again.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's just like, that's just how it's going to be. But for the next month at least, we get to spend some time with Venus here, which will be lightening things up. And it should be like if you had any relationship discomfort while Venus was in Aries, moving it back into Pisces can help you smooth things over. Um, and then when it goes back in Aries, maybe you'll have that whole thing happen again, but who knows? Anyways, it's it's a nice time to smooth things over, nonetheless.
For sure. And it's just a lot happening with the Pisces house because we will jump forward to Thursday. And I did forget to mention on here, but like we have our last Hellenistic moon board, of course, that starts on Sunday morning and then it goes through April 1st. So again, there is this kind of lull right when Neptune enters Aries. There's like this lull of aspects. Um,
Mm,
for Sunday, Monday, just really Sunday, Monday, because April 1st, Tuesday, that morning is when the moon makes an aspect. So,
yeah.
um, just to the last one though, I double checked. There's no more of these Hellenistic moon border courses for the rest of the year. So I think that was just really interesting that we
Yeah, that it
had
happened
like
like all at one
five,
time.
five
Yeah,
in March. Yeah.
that's
Isn't that
crazy.
crazy? Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think it speaks to like this again, like we talked about before, like one cycle ending and now we're going into a new cycle and like that lull that happens in that transitory phase.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah. We kind of had like a deep pause there. I remember um like during those Hellenistic moon void, of course, I have never struggled to sleep so much.
Yeah,
Like, and I don't know, maybe like moon representing like sleep and dreams and things like that when it's not making aspects, it's just like,
there's
no,
nothing to dream about. There's
yeah, it's
nothing
like,
to sleep about.
sorry, we are not allowing anybody into the dreamlands at this time, like doors closed. And I seriously was like thinking to myself, like, maybe I'm not supposed to dream right now. Like, maybe I'm not supposed to
Yeah.
be there. So,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
did you experience with them?
I just experienced like these bursts of like energies that are really intermittent. Like I felt like, oh, I get like really creative and I really want to do all these things. And I make this big list of all these things that I want to do, write, and talk about. And then I just like don't do them because we get into a Hellenistic mood course and I'm like, now I'm just like
Uh,
dissociating, reading a book or like watching TV and like not doing all these big ideas. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna go start it again. It's just this constant start, but nothing felt like it was like the right time.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
you know? Like I was
Yeah.
like, these are all great ideas, but it's not the right time yet. And I just had that constant feeling all over March.
Yeah, maybe it's like illumination, but then it's like womp womp, like I don't
Right.
know. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it.
So I don't
Hmm.
know. It was really interesting, but this is our last one that week. And then
The
we'll
third.
start getting some aspects. Yeah. So the 3rd of April on Thursday, Mercury now will conjunct the North Node. And I did look it up when we were talking. So Mercury first conjunct the North Node March 1st. So you're looking at like the start of each of the months as when
Hmm.
the first aspect happened. But now Mercury retrograde is going to conjunct the North Node. Just like a month ago again. Bigger ideas. I think Mercury and Pisces again in the fallen position is like poetic and more dreamy and more like softening the communications. Um, but just reviewing those ideas or maybe beliefs being in Pisces or like just conversations you were having from March 1st, coming back around again. Hey, is this still an idea you want to pursue? Or is it still a creative pursuit you want?
Yeah, especially if it were to relate to like if you're a songwriter or a writer or a journalist or somebody who uses your voice in some way, um, anything to do with that like communicating or writing aspect. If there's any like projects that you have, would be a wonderful time to put those under review. Um, and just like make sure that you iron out some of the details related to those. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and even like infusing it with a bit of that Pisces like creativity or allowing your work to help people feel something. That's like a big Pisces thing is like the feelings that are infused.
Right, maybe it's this like empathy experience too, where you're like relating more with people on their experiences or reviewing certain relationships or conversations. And like, I do feel like Pisces is just more of a collective gathering sign. So this may
Hmm.
be more of less the individual ideas and needs and more like, hey, I need community for this now.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
So, I don't
Yeah,
know, just
because
kind of,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. I didn't have
I
anything
would
else.
Yeah, I was just gonna say because the North Node in Pisces in general is representing that like collective community, so I could definitely see that.
Right, just the more realizations of like, hey, we need a group for this now.
Right.
Like I had these ideas, but I actually need people to help me with it.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I that will be kind of good, slower to the week. And then we really will end this week on April 4th, the Friday, with a little pile up where some aspects. So you have like an outer planet aspect. Saturn is going to be sextiling Uranus. So Saturn in Pisces is sextiling Uranus in Taurus. And then Mars in Cancer will also be trining Saturn and sextiling Uranus. So there's like they're all at 24 degrees. So they're all aspecting each other and they're all kind of being in communication.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was interesting because in Donald Trump's chart, Trump has his midheaven at 24 of Taurus. And
Oh,
so it will all be
Uranus.
interacting with this. Yeah, Uranus is on his midheaven. The last time Uranus was on his midheaven, he got shot at. Um,
There you have it.
just kidding. I'm not condoning
You
violence
heard
here.
it
I'm just
here
telling,
first. Yeah.
just, just telling you what happened. And
Mm-hmm.
but Mars has been going through his 12th house, and it's
Oh,
right on top of his Saturn and Venus there in his 12th house. So I don't know. It definitely some disruption to his life, but
yeah. I mean, I could definitely see like, I mean, these are like a lot of like tough
hard planets.
planets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are all hard planets. Like even Uranus is like one of the more difficult ones for sure because it's just disruption and change.
Yeah, Uranus sucks. I get mad at it all the time. Like, but especially like, if something were to happen with him in general, like I'm not saying that it will, but with that Mars aspect, it would be like, maybe whoever would bring him under attack. It's like they're trying to protect their homeland in some way. Uh,
Right.
yeah, it's like that Mars in Cancer is like very protective, and maybe they would see or view Donald Trump, Uranus on his midheaven, as somebody that's a threat to that, or is like making these huge changes, that's like threatening their personal security or like family security in some way.
That's a
Um,
good point.
yeah, and especially like Saturn here, it's like threatening like long-term stability as well, or like the ability to be stable at all, you know?
Yeah, like all those things are being disruption. Like Uranus is like the norms or the traditional beliefs or the structures being disrupted or changed or challenged.
Yeah.
Mars again is like action being taken on those structures to challenge them. Like those two coming together is definitely like a frustrating, they're malefics, they're gonna bring hardship and like challenging those beliefs, and then it's all creating this like change that's unfolding.
Yeah, like him even like cutting away from like those like long-standing laws and things like that. That's like very representational of like a Mars Saturn aspect too. Um
Right? Like
I
the
feel like
accumulation.
yeah, it's a very interesting pile up. I think that very acutely and accurately speaks to the current events.
Right. And then the moon is in Cancer at this time, so it's like all based on emotional
Mm,
responses.
yep. Yep, we could definitely be have more heightened emotion at this time. Um Yeah, but as that's like reflected externally, you could have some different yet similar like undertone themes happening in your own personal life.
Yeah, so in your own personal life, what have you been going through with Mars in Cancer? Since Mars
Mm-hmm.
been in Cancer since January. I'm so over it,
Yeah,
but
we're all over it. Yep.
it's been in Cancer since January, and like how now are you seeing those actions that you have reviewed and now you're taking now are challenging old structures and then creating disruptions in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Yeah, this will definitely be a day like disruptions could or unexpected things could like heavily come into play here. Definitely
Yeah.
like yeah, things you weren't expecting that come as a surprise.
Maybe it will probably be for the better, like the Mars trine Saturn, but it may
Yeah,
be
it's like for
like
the long term good, yeah.
long term better. Yeah, it may
Yeah.
not feel good in this day. Like it could be something that really is hard on this day. Like maybe you experience a job loss or just something that disrupts you, but in the long term, you needed that change because it helped you with a better foundation, a better structure that you need to go down.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of interpreting it. Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, that wraps up our week. And that's all we have. So, if you want more content from us, check us out on YouTube, on TikTok, and Instagram at Two Girls Talk Transits. And we'll see you all next week.
See you.
Bye.